Hello.
Hello.
Everybody.
Hello, everybody. We're in the dark. Because mostly today, be doing one thing. This kind of came up when we were doing the logo. So what I wanted to do today is just give you a quick tip for your own personal projects.
Yes.
And since I have my leader of my art department here, Dave, Ed, he will kind of help me explain it, seeing it through fresh eyes, and maybe have some comments or some questions that come up along the way. One of the things that we noticed when we were doing our logo was the wiggly line syndrome. And you can do this in almost any art package you have. You're probably going to have a pencil and a brush tool. The pencil is going to do what they call strokes, and the brush is going to do the fills. Basically, the difference between the two is the brush gives you an area of color, and the stroke gives you kind of like an outline of that. They usually generally work together when you make an object, but you don't have to use them together. Since we're going to do more of a volume thing, we're going to use the brush. The pencil, to be honest, you can probably do almost the same exact things with both nowadays, but in way back, they both had specific things that they were intended to be used for. One was for the outline, one was for the inside. That was pretty much it. Any questions or suggestions so far?
Not yet.
Not yet. Okay. So I'm hitting the brush tool, and if you have a brush tool, go ahead and hit it. I have a real small size, as you can see on the piece, so I am going to make it as large as possible. And I did black, but you can do any color. In fact, let's pick out a blue. And generally, oops, does this look? This doesn't look blue.
This isn't blue.
This isn't blue. What is this?
It's a gray.
It's a gray. Okay, well, let's start over.
Because it's the exact color.
Oh, I picked the wrong one. There we go. All right, now we can do a blue. So let's say you're making like a nice, like, looking wave here. Yeah, look at that. Isn't it beautiful? Oh, that's so good. All right, Dave. Now I'm going to hand the controls over to David. And go ahead. You want to draw any more of it?
Yes.
David's going to come on here and draw a little bit.
Okay.
So you got a nice little blue wave. And then we're just using a mouse, so it's a little like mouse, not a tablet or anything like that. Now go ahead and just do one color.
Okay.
David's going to change the color on me. Oh, look at that. Now it's flower-like. And as you connect these fills, it'll try to create a full body. Oops, are you done?
Yeah.
Sorry, I grabbed the controls before we were ready. But one of the things you can see or notice is that when you get it like this, you can kind of have these little bumps all over the place. So, you know, right here, there's an edge, right here, there's an edge, right here, there's an edge. So what we want to do is get a hold of the control points. Now, usually you have like a sub-selection tool or just a soft selection, they used to call it, a couple other names, but they all do the same thing. You click on the edge, there you go, and you should get something like this. And in here, you usually have these squares. Now, these squares can be any of the above. They can be a Bezier curve, a b-spline, a NURB, which is the old-fashioned, well, actually it's a b-spline. It's a non-uniform rational b-spline for those of you out there playing. And then it could be even what we call a parametric curve, but you don't see those too much. They all have kind of the same thing in common nowadays, and that is the handlebar. So let me zoom in on this in order for us to see those handlebars. So let's go ahead and grab our selection tool. See these guys here? And maybe I should do my background, a little bit different. I'm going to make it an ugly yellow. Oh, yeah, isn't that pretty? No, David says no. Maybe we should try again with the yellow. Oh, that's so much better. No, what should we pick?
We should pick an orange.
An orange, like that. No, was that a little too red?
Yeah, that's that. Yes.
All right. Now let's go back into it. Now you get to see. So if I click on one of these control points, these handlebar guys, which allows you. Come on. There we go. Which allows you to change that curve. Cool, huh?
Yeah.
The first instinct that most of my students will do is just try to manipulate every one of these guys, and let me just zoom in a little bit more, just to kind of make the point here.
Dada,
Mm-hmm.
I have a question.
Go ahead. What's the question?
So like, how do you know which thing to drag and click to make it like not a bump? Like, because this one isn't directly on the bump, so imagine there was a bump right there. Which one?
Okay. So yeah, so in this case, we're going to click off it. My son's asking, this bump, what's affecting it? And ultimately, the way all like Bezier curves, and they all have kind of this local phenomena, which means that if I click on this guy, this is one of my control points, he controls only the line to the left and the line to the right. So if I go over here, he's not in any of this control. And he's not in control of any of this guy over here. It's just what's to the left and to the right of him, or to the top and the bottom of it. And I thought we had handlebars on. Let me click on one I know has handlebars on it. Oh, he does. Okay, there we go. So that is going to just notice how it's just changing the left and the right. And so you can go in and mess with these a lot, but what I find the first thing you should do is actually just delete them. They usually have a delete tool right under your sub-selection tool, or somewhere else. Now, oh yeah, in this case it's a pen tool. So they actually have a delete anchor point. They're calling it an anchor point. You can call it a control point. It's pretty much the same thing. You can call them a node. What else? Vertex. They've been called tons of things, but they all mean pretty much the same thing. So anyways, we can go ahead and delete those, but in most selection tools nowadays, we can actually just delete by just clicking on the delete button. And like I said before, sometimes that might have been too far. But what we could do is delete a bunch of them. But before I go in there, I wanted to make one point.
Couldn't you just, if you don't want to do all this stuff for the bumps, couldn't you just draw a line in the circle and then use the paint bucket and then just...
Yeah, so there is, you can do predefined shapes, which is probably the best way to get rid of it. But the problem is the more complex the shape, the more you can't avoid doing this.
Yeah.
So, oh, I want to click back to this. The one thing here is this is a different type of Bezier curve. So when you have a Bezier curve and you see two handles, they generally go back and forth like this. And a lot of times in many software, they'll be equal space. So this dot that I'm clicking on here will be the same distances away from this spot. They don't have to be, but some do it that way. Actually, I'm going to move that back up. When you see it here, and you don't see a second one, or you see one that is not making a continuous line, so in this case, this guy looks like he goes or diagonal, then takes a hard right. That is what's called a Bezier corner. And you have to convert those back and forth to get those. These are great if you want to do a tip of something.
Grapes?
Great.
Oh.
So if you want to do like an abrupt shape like that, or change your space, and then if you want a smoother curve, they're not what you want. So in this case, again, I am going to delete this guy, and I'm going to delete this guy. And believe it or not, a lot of times people, oh, I keep hitting that guy. That guy apparently is crucial. So what we'll do here Just delete this guy instead. You think we get lucky? No,
No.
no. How about we just delete this guy to make our point? And at first you think, oh my gosh, I've lost all this control. But no, actually it kind of gives you more control because you're not going to have to fiddle around with all those handlebars. So let's go ahead and get this back. All right, so if I grab this guy and pull them, now you're going to see a softer, curvier spot. And as you can see, if I click off this for a second, there's still going to be a little bump. And then all of a sudden, see how much smoother this becomes? Can you move this down a little bit? You can move these control points too. You don't have to just do the... so you can actually move these guys as well to kind of get that rounder shape. And so now we get almost a nice, perfect curve, right?
Yeah.
And you can do the same thing here. Again, you have to then choose, well, do we have enough? Normally, I would say get rid of one of these two. But as we've seen before, if we get rid of either of these two, we're going to get in trouble. I'm going to try it one more time. Maybe I will get lucky. What do you think? 50-50?
50.
Yeah, that was good. And the reason was I accidentally added a vertex and then deleted it over here, which I think sent it up. So now I'm going to go back and create it. Now I get a nice, much smoother, curvier, and less bumpy pieces. So the moral of the story is, David, if you want a smooth curve, what? Here's my art director right here. You got to delete the points first before you attempt it. Because remember, you can always add more too if you go crazy. Again, most of these guys, most software packages have an add, anchor, or control point, so I can always put another one in there later. But you pull less hair out of your head.
Yeah.
Going with a smaller version. Any other points?
Or you could just not pull a hair out of your head.
Or you could just not pull hair. Do you have any questions?
No, I don't.
Okay. You want to try playing with one? These are kind of tough. So we're going to let David mess with one. Why don't you try something from the bottom there?
Yeah.
Oh, hold on. Let me get you back to the selection tool. All right. Pick any one you want.
Yeah. What?
And if you want to get rid of them, you just hit delete.
Okay,
There you go. There's one.
even this one.
You got to click on the edge on these things. So if you click in the middle, it's going to think you're trying to change the color or something like that. So you can just let go. There you go. And today it's particularly tight.
There.
Oh, you got it? There you go. See, look at this. My designer is getting better at the moment. Okay, this is us signing off. Say goodbye, David, as he deletes curves and changes them.
Everybody, bye.
See you later.
Hiya.